in the bill would not be entitled to any statutory benefit under Title 38 or any other title of the United States Code by reason for such recognition alone. Madam Speaker, I would like to yield to much time as he may consume the gentleman from Iowa.
Gentleman from Iowa is recognized.
I thank the Speaker, and I strongly urge my colleagues to support H.R. 1025, which I join my colleague, the gentleman from Minnesota, in introducing this bill. My colleagues, you may not be aware that a member of the Guard or Reserve can complete an entire career without earning the title of Veteran of the Armed Forces of the United States if they've never served on federal active duty for other than training purposes. As a result, National Guard members protecting our skies and airports or protecting our southern border, technically under state orders, may one day retire from the Guard but not qualify to be classified as a veteran of our armed forces. Our military increasingly depends on the National Guard and Reserve to keep our country safe. Men and women who served our country faithfully for decades deserve full recognition as veterans, even if they were never deployed overseas. Current law does not consider Guard and Reserve members to be veterans unless they were deployed for more than 30 days. The policy excludes many who deployed for long periods of time, carried out critical support roles during times of war and peace, engaged in frequent and often dangerous training exercises, and stood ready to risk their lives to protect our nation during military careers that spanned for decades. This legislation recognizes the service and sacrifice of National Guard and Reserve retirees and grants them the full honor of being called veterans, which they've earned. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation, which is a matter of honor and fairness for our citizen soldiers, and I yield back.
Reserves. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
The bill before us, H.R. 1025, as noted, sponsored by Congressman WALZ of Minnesota, would ensure that deserving men and women of our National Guard and Reserve receive the honor and the distinction of being called veterans. Seems a simple thing, and yet it is denied them. Representative WALZ introduced this bill in the last Congress. I'm disappointed to say it didn't clear the Senate, so we're going to have to try again. Mr. Speaker, our Guard and Reserve comprise a large component of those called to serve in our current wars, and those changing dynamics need to be incorporated into our policy. I think this bill strikes the desired balance. I am in full support of the bill, and I would yield to the author of the bill, Congressman WALZ, to explain it in more detail. As much time as he may consume.
The gentleman from Minnesota is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the ranking member for yielding time as well as being a staunch supporter of this and, of course, other legislation to secure the rights and benefits for our veterans. I'd also like to thank Mr. Runyon for his unwavering support on this and other bills, and appreciate all the things that are moving today. A special thank you to Chairman Miller and the Majority Leader and the Majority Whip who changed the schedule around to allow this bill to be debated tonight after myself and Representatives Rowe and Benishek and Desjardins and Denham returned from Afghanistan, visiting our warriors downrange, defending freedom and putting their lives on the line and doing it in such a professional manner, and standing there and not being able to tell the difference between a Navy, a Marine, an Army, National Guard, a reservist, all of those services working together in unity for this. So I'm proud to sponsor this piece of legislation. For far too long, the oversight, the Honor America's Guard and Reserve Act, it puts veterans, and the veterans community has prioritized this for a long time, about the honor that you heard my good friend and the lead Republican sponsor on this from Iowa, Mr. Latham, talk about. It's about that honor and dignity in a country respecting that. These are folks that serve in so many ways, responding to national emergencies, but most importantly, I think, standing ready to be deployed at a moment's notice as a deterrent to aggression. They stood there during the Cold War, many of these people for 20 years, serving this nation, training the current warriors who are downrange, and yet we will honor them with military retired pay, medical care through TRICARE. We'll even bury them in a veterans cemetery. But under current law, that member of that reserve component, if they weren't called up for Title X for more than 179 days, the honor we will not bestow upon them is the right to call themselves veterans, and that truly is a gross injustice. I believe it's an oversight to them, and it's an oversight to their families who understood the respect they did. I think it's basic common sense. A reservist can be buried in a federal cemetery. They should have the right, and what this bestows upon them, no money, no extra benefits, but when the flag comes by on Veterans Days, they can render a hand salute in taking part when that national anthem's played. It is about honor. May not seem important to some, but for those who wear the uniform, subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice, received the same training, and spent 20 years away from their families and the ability to be called up, this lack of recognition is a gross injustice. 1025 will finally correct this straightforward way, including the Guard Reserve retiree and the definition of the term veteran. It will ensure they're no longer relegated to second-class status. As I've said, the sole purpose is to grant veteran status to those who have been denied it to this point. In light of this fact, let me be absolutely clear. It's about honor. It's not about monetary benefits or material privilege. Both the Congressional Research Service as well as the Department of Veterans Affairs concluded this legislation will provide no additional benefits. Instead, is a tribute to their service. Been reinforced by the Congressional Budget Office, which says it has a zero cost to taxpayers. It's a simple bill. It simply states that those members of the Guard who've served for all of their time, stood ready to be deployed for whatever reason at a moment's notice, have earned the right to be considered veterans. I'd like to point out this legislation is supported by the Military Coalition, the National Military Veterans Alliance, which together represent more than 4 million active duty servicemen or veterans and their families. I'd like to thank everyone who was engaged in this. It's been a long process. We've got a companion version in the Senate, Madam Speaker, and the time is right to bestow this honor on those that have given so much. So with that, I encourage my colleagues to use this as an opportunity to right an injustice, to stand tall with our Guard and Reserve soldiers, to set this right, and allow them to proudly, by this Veterans Day, be able to render their hand salute to our flag. With that, I reserve the balance of our time.
The gentleman from California reserves. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Madam, at this time I would like to yield as much time as he may consume. The gentleman from Tennessee, Dr. Rowe.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Madam Speaker, I want to thank my friend Mr. Walz for his leadership on this very important issue, which is long overdue. I think both sides of the aisle feel that this is an injustice. It's been gone on far too long. When you take the oath to uphold the Constitution, you put on the service uniform of our country, you serve your obligation and are honorably discharged, you are a veteran. You're as much a veteran as I am, who served on active duty. Just a few hours ago, Congressman Walz and others who he's mentioned and I were in Landstuhl, Germany, before we flew home, and saw National Guardsmen who may not be able to be called veterans flying planes home to bring our wounded warriors home. I knew that this legislation was coming up tonight, and I felt compelled after meeting these young men and women who are doing an incredible job to protect our wounded warriors and protect our country, that they'd be offered this status of veteran. This bill rights a long-standing wrong, and I urge very strong support of this much-needed legislation, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from New Jersey reserves. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I have no further speakers and would yield back when they tell me they have no further speakers.
The gentleman from California yields back. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and rescind their remarks on H.R. 1025.
Without objection.
I once again encourage all members to support H.R. 1025, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 1025 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Camp isn't here, so we're gonna.
just, we didn't, I was negotiating not with the phone number. It was perfect. Looks like there's several committee members here.
Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does Mr. Brady rise?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to House Resolution 425, I call up the bill H.R. 3078, the United States-Colombia Trade Promotion Agreement Implementation Act, and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the title of the bill, designate the Senate amendment, and report the motion.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Columbia.
Would the gentleman from Texas... The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 156, H.R. 3078, a bill to implement the United States-Colombia Trade Promotion Agreement.
Pursuant to House Resolution 425, the bill is considered read. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Brady, and the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, each will control 45 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, at this time, Madam Speaker, at this time, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
It's now my privilege to yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from Washington, who is ranking on trade, Mr. McDermott.
The gentleman from Washington is recognized for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, tonight the fat's in the fire, and we're starting with the tough one up front. And I rise in opposition to the Colombia Free Trade Agreement. I believe that trade can have transformative effects on a society and its economy. I've seen it firsthand in Seattle, where 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 people make their living directly from trade. I've seen it in Southern Africa. I helped write the AGOA Act and have seen the effects that it's had there. When trade is done right, it creates opportunities, it generates jobs, and it lifts people up the economic ladder, if it is done right. Now, I don't come to this with any kind of ideological knee-jerk. I am one who believes that you need to go and look. And I've been in Colombia on several different occasions, once with Commerce Secretary Gutierrez. We went out to community meetings. We sat down and listened to people talk. President Uribe had a community meeting, and we saw what was going on. I've been to Medellin, which was one of the most dangerous cities in Central America, in fact, in the world. And one day when one of the drug lords was taken out, the people of Medellin said, "No más, no more, we don't want any more." And Colombia has come a long way from the image that people have of that country. But there still are problems, too many remaining, and the efforts to address them have not been really activated. Now, the labor problems are really grave. Last year, more union leaders were killed in Colombia than the rest of the world combined. Nearly every murder has been gotten away with. No one's been arrested, no prosecution, nothing. Now, effective organizing would save lives in Colombia, just like it has in the rest of the world. But Colombian laws compound this culture of impunity by making it easy to deny workers their basic rights. Imagine what it does to a worker thinking about joining a union to improve his lot or her lot. No wonder only 4.4% of Colombia's labor force dares to unionize. Democrats have been clear about this situation from the very start, and for the sake of the working people of Colombia, for the safety of the Colombian workers and their families, and for the working people here in the United States, because the working community around the world is all one, really. what happens to workers in one area has an effect in other areas. And if we allow people to take jobs to where the cheapest labor is or where there are no rules or no anything, we then damage our own workers. And that's part of the problem in this whole issue as we discuss it here tonight. Now, to be sure, we've made some important victories in trying to renegotiate this agreement. We were able to, after the Bush administration had written these agreements, we said no. And then we took over in the House, and Mr. Rangel and Mr. Levin negotiated the May 10th agreement with the President of the United States, and that recognized international labor standards, and it was a crucial step. The renegotiation of the US.-Colombia Free Trade Agreement has also produced a labor action plan, which was another part of the development of what was going on with Colombia. This sets out...
The gentleman's time has expired.
For another minute? I'll save a little of this for tomorrow, because we're going to debate on this again tomorrow.
The gentleman from Michigan reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to yield the balance of the time to the chairman of the committee, Mr. Camp, and that he may control time.
The gentleman from Michigan is recognized and will control the time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman's recognized.
Madam Speaker, today is a good day. Many of us have been working for years for the opportunity to approve our pending trade agreements with Colombia, Panama, and South Korea. We've called on the President throughout his term to submit all three agreements to Congress, but opposition among some Democrats led many to believe that we'd have to settle for just one or two of the agreements. Today we have all three pending agreements before us. Approving them will resuscitate the U.S. trade agenda, create good U.S. jobs, and help get our economy moving again. The U.S. International Trade Commission has estimated that the three agreements will increase U.S. exports by at least $13 billion. By the President's own estimation, that could generate 250,000 new jobs. The ITC has also determined that these agreements will increase U.S. gross domestic product by at least $10 billion, a stimulus that doesn't cost a single dime in government spending. This agreement disproportionately benefits the U.S. because it rectifies the current imbalance in U.S.-Colombian trade. Last year, Colombian exporters paid virtually no tariffs when they shipped goods here, but our exporters paid an average of over 11%. The agreement removes that imbalance by eliminating Colombian duties. The need is urgent. Our exporters have paid nearly $4 billion in unnecessary duties since this agreement was signed. We know from experience that these agreements will yield benefits. Between 2000 and 2010, total U.S. exports increased by just over 60%. But our exports to countries with which we have trade agreements increased by over 90%. Our exports to Peru, for example, more than doubled since passage of the U.S.-Peru trade agreement from $2.7 billion in 2006 to $6.1 billion in 2010. That's $2.4 billion more than the ITC had forecast. In the face of this major economic opportunity, delay has been costly. Major economies whose workers and exporters compete directly with ours have moved aggressively to sign and implement trade agreements with Colombia, undermining our competitive edge. Our workers and job-creating exporters are falling behind, losing export market share that took years to build. For example, the U.S. share of Colombia's corn, wheat, and soybean imports fell from 71% in 2008 to 27% in 2010 after Argentina's exporters gained preferential access to the Colombian market. And after Canada's trade agreement with Colombia went into effect on August 15th, Colombia's largest wheat importer dropped U.S. suppliers in favor of Canadian wheat. Adding insult to injury, Canada signed its trade agreement with Colombia 2 years after we signed our agreement with Colombia. In short, we owe it to U.S. workers and exporters to approve this agreement now and to press the President for prompt implementation. It's not only considerable economic benefits that are at stake. The delay in implementing these agreements has left strong allies out in the cold. Colombia, for example, currently sits with the United States on the UN Security Council and chairs its Iran Sanctions Committee. Colombian troops have served alongside U.S. troops at war, and Colombia has been training militaries and police around the world in counter-narcotics and counterinsurgency. As 5 former commanders of U.S. Southern Command have said, and I quote, "This agreement will meet our duty to stand shoulder to shoulder with Colombians as they have stood by the United States as friends and allies," end quote. I urge my colleagues to join me in approving this important agreement, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Michigan reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
Now a privilege to recognize Mr. PASCRELL of New Jersey, a very distinguished member of our committee, for 2.5 minutes.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to challenge just about everything that my very good friend Mr. Camp laid before this House. First, let's talk about the numbers. The updated report that Mr. Camp referred to in terms of the number of jobs that would be created by this Colombian deal contains a very specific disclaimer that it is not an official estimate. Additionally, any reports estimate that the overall trade deficit will increase. An increase in trade deficit cannot lead to job creation. It's never happened. It will not happen. And you throw numbers in front of people, and you know what? You better know what you're talking about. In fact, given the projected changes, the growth of the United States trade deficit with Colombia will displace 83,000 jobs in the United States of America by 2015, for a net loss of an additional 55,000 jobs. Those are the numbers. I didn't make them up. So when you think that any time you're going to parade a trade deal in front of us, and I voted for Peru because I thought it was a great step forward, and think that we're just going to have to believe, anybody's going to have to believe on either side of the aisle, that what you're saying is really what the truth is, you're done. You're over. The American people don't accept it. 4-to-1, they don't accept these trade deals that have diminished us. But the worst part of the Colombian deal is this. Since the new president, Mr. Sanchez, we've had 38 union people killed. Family men, teachers, lawyers, shot in the back of the head, wired up on a tree, and 1 indictment. You want to bring the Colombian trade deal here we go, and make us believe that you're not only going to create jobs, but that these victims are going to be no more. Well, you had an opportunity. Here's the numbers, Madam Chair. Here are the numbers, very clear, very succinct. From 2007 to 2010, 51 murders last year, no convictions of the 94% of the cases, 130 human rights defenders were detained in 2010. This is an aberration. This is wrong, and the American people aren't going to take it anymore. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Has expired. The gentleman from Michigan reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman. At this time, I yield 3 minutes to my distinguished colleague on the Ways and Means Committee, the chairman of the Trade Subcommittee, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Brady.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Chairman Camp, for your leadership on trade and really your critical role of working across the aisle and with this administration to finally bring this free trade agreement and others to the floor. The world's changed. It's not enough to simply sell American, to buy American anymore. We have to sell American. We have to go out in every corner of this world and sell American products and services and agricultural products. But when we do, we find too much the world is tilted against us. Too many countries have an America need not apply sign. But these trade agreements change that. They tear that sign down, and with our best trading allies, they level the playing field and create two-way trade, where it's not just sales into America. We get the chance to sell our products and compete for new customers in their country, and that's critical because so much of the world's consumers live outside of America. This Colombia agreement is critical because, one, Colombia is such a critical ally of ours. As a country, they've made remarkable progress on human rights, labor rights, democracy, and rule of law. They fought terrorism to a halt. They've created a much safer country than a decade ago, and in fact, if they were a company, we would call them the turnaround of the decade. Colombia is a trusted ally. More important, they're a dynamic economy that wants to trade first with the United States, and that's what this agreement does. It opens the door for over $1 billion of new sales from America into Colombia. It increases our economy by $2.5 billion. It creates new standards that allow not just our agricultural community, not just our manufacturing community to sell two-way, but creates the standards so that our financial and telecommunications and energy management and accounting and a whole list of other services can sell on a standard equal to equal, plug in together so that we can both compete and buy and sell as equal trading partners. It's critical, too, that we not allow America to fall farther behind. It has been, as Chairman Camp said, nearly 5 years since this agreement has been signed. President Bush signed, I think, a very strong agreement. President Obama, to his credit, continued to work with both sides of the aisle, I think, to put on some preconditions that have been very important to our Democrat members and to labor rights. This agreement has strong bipartisan support, has strong economic support, and is critical for a national security ally like Colombia that we wait no longer. That Congress stand up, Republicans and Democrats together, to pass a bipartisan jobs bill that creates two-way trade, creates real jobs, and strengthens our security relationship with a remarkable ally in our hemisphere. I strongly support this agreement and urge its passage. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
Now my pleasure to yield 1 minute to the distinguished representative from Ohio, Ms. Capter.
The gentlewoman from Ohio is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank my dear friend Mr. Levin for yielding. It's time for America to negotiate fair trade agreements that create jobs in America and are based on a rule of law, respect for life and liberty before profits for the few. I rise in opposition to this Colombia deal. It's just another NAFTA-like trade accord that too often are job killers, people killers, and democracy killers. This administration promised an agreement with Colombia would not move forward until the violence and targeted killings of union leaders and religious leaders stopped. This is a picture of Father Jose Restrepo, who was found murdered along a roadside in rural Colombia, gunned down as he traveled through the countryside. The week before his murder, Father Restrepo had traveled to Bogota, the capital city there, to raise concerns of his community about the impact of a giant open-pit gold mine. Father is one of 6 Catholic priests killed this year alone in Colombia, in addition to 22 union leaders that have been killed there just since January. What kind of a deal is this with a nation that has had dozens and dozens and dozens since 2010, 51 people murdered for their trade union activities in Colombia alone? What is wrong with our country that we cannot stand up for democracy, for human rights, and for job creation in this country? I yield back my remaining
expired. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
How much time is remaining?
Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, has 38 minutes.
All right.
And the gentleman, Mr. Levin, has 37.5 minutes remaining.
At this time, I yield 2 minutes to the distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentleman from California, Mr. Herger.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
Madam Speaker, The trade agreements before us represent a major opportunity for American small businesses and workers. By leveling the playing field for U.S. goods and services entering Colombia, Panama, and South Korea, these agreements would provide a significant boost to our economy and create an estimated 250,000 new jobs. They are common sense, win-win agreements for the American people. Here's why. Removing tariffs and other barriers to U.S. exports means that our U.S. products become more competitive in foreign markets, which in turn generate more sales and more business for our farmers, ranchers, manufacturers, and service providers. Passing these agreements will mean more jobs, more economic growth, and more opportunities both on and off the farm for the men and women in my Northern California congressional district and the rest of our nation. Perhaps best of all, these trade agreements will provide real, permanent economic stimulus at no cost to the American taxpayers. They represent fundamentally sound economics, getting government-imposed barriers out of the way and letting Americans, business, and workers do what they do best. As the former ranking Republican on the Ways and Means Subcommittee on Trade, I have joined many others in urging support for these agreements. While I believe this week should have come a lot sooner, these are real job bills, and I urge my colleagues to support all three. I yield back my time.
The gentleman from California yields back. The gentleman from Michigan,
now
Mr.
you have
Levin,
1
is
minute
recognized.
to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Pallone.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in opposition to the 3 free trade pacts up for consideration this week. It's essential that we work to keep jobs here in the United States, and I believe the trade agreements with South Korea, Colombia, and Panama will cost U.S. jobs. We should be doing everything we can to create jobs and advance economic opportunity here at home. These trade pacts are modeled on the NAFTA agreement, and the results will be the same. In the last decade alone, we've lost 55,000 manufacturing plants and 6 million jobs with NAFTA in place. We don't want to repeat the ill effects of NAFTA. The essential issue at hand, Madam Speaker, is that trade deals between a large economy and a smaller economy naturally benefit the smaller economy, in this case South Korea, Colombia, and Panama. The economies of these countries are a fraction of the size of the U.S., and they will stand to benefit greatly by exporting their goods here, while I fear U.S. exports will not have the same advantage. Madam Speaker, we should be focusing on passing the American Jobs Act, which provides incentives to businesses to hire new workers in the United States, and not passing free trade pacts that will further encourage companies to move jobs overseas. I yield back.
The gentleman from New Jersey yields back. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 1 minute to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentleman from Louisiana, Dr. Bustani.
The gentleman from Louisiana is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colombia is a key ally of the United States and the 3rd largest export market in Latin America for U.S. goods and services, and that's despite having tariff barriers in place. This agreement was negotiated in good faith years ago. Basically, American credibility is on the line. Our credibility as to whether or not we will follow through with our commitments. After years of delay, U.S. businesses, farmers, and ranchers have been losing market share because of the inability to move forward on this agreement. In 2008, U.S. agricultural producers had 71% of that market. By 2010, we were down to 27%, and we're still dropping. And that's because other countries who have fulfilled agreements with Colombia, after we have already negotiated this, have gained that market share. They have picked up the market share we have lost. Passing this agreement is a very important step in reversing this onerous trend for our farmers, our ranchers, and our businesses in this country. Colombia is currently the 10th largest export market for my home state of Louisiana, and it stands to grow. It stands to grow as a result. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Pass this agreement.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin.
And now you have 1 minute to the gentlelady from California, Ms. Woolsey.
Gentlewoman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, today with unemployment in the United States over 9% and the middle class under siege, we're considering a Colombian trade bill that would cost, according to the Economic Policy Institute, 55,000 jobs. That makes absolutely no sense. It's bad enough to ship U.S. jobs overseas, but particularly to a country that leads the world in deadly violence against union members. In Colombia, to band together in solidarity with your fellow workers is to take your life into your own hands. 23 trade unionists have been murdered so far this year, including one teacher, a teacher who was hanged with barbed wire. Last year, 51 such murders. As the AFL-CIO put it, if 51 CEOs had been murdered in Colombia, this deal would be on a very slow track indeed. Let's reject these trade agreements. Let's put America back to work with a big, bold jobs plan for American people.
The time is expired.
I yield back.
Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Gerlach, a member of the Ways and Means Committee.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentleman. Madam Speaker, I rise this evening in support of the Colombia Free Trade Agreement and indeed all 3 free trade agreements, the most significant trade package for our country in more than a decade. These trade pacts with Colombia, South Korea, and Panama are significant. They will unlock new opportunities and markets for Pennsylvania companies to sell their products overseas, and that means more jobs. By leveling the playing field and eliminating burdensome tariffs, these agreements will improve our ability to sell American-made products overseas. Specifically in Pennsylvania, these agreements will be a boon for Commonwealth's farmers and provide new opportunities in other key export sectors of Pennsylvania, including primary metal producers. Tariffs on more than 90% of primary metals, such as steel, titanium, and aluminum, and zinc, will be eliminated immediately. Once the free trade agreement with South Korea is fully implemented, more than 70% of all Pennsylvania exports will be duty-free, and similar trade opportunities exist in Colombia and Panama free trade agreements as well. As we continue to lose market share in these global regions, Pennsylvanians and indeed all Americans simply cannot afford another delay in these agreements. Pass them now.
The gentleman's time has
I yield back
expired.
and thank the Speaker.
Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
Thank you. I now yield 1.5 minutes to the very active member on these issues, Mr. McGovern of Massachusetts.
Thank you.
Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, the Colombia FTA is bad for American workers, bad for jobs, and bad for Colombian workers, small farmers, and human rights defenders. Colombia is still a country in conflict that affects thousands every year. We know Colombia is the deadliest place in the world to be a trade unionist, but it also suffers from over 4 million internally displaced, second only to Sudan. Over 1 million Colombians are refugees in neighboring countries. They are fleeing terrifying, crippling violence from paramilitaries, guerrillas, and even Colombia's own army. And after the people leave, drug traffickers, criminals, and wealthy interests come in and they take over. This FTA will only increase that vicious cycle. Nearly every study done asserts that the FTA will push even more small farmers off their land. They will either be forced to join the ranks of the displaced, grow coca, or join guerrillas or paramilitaries just to feed their families. They won't be buying American goods, Madam Speaker. And when Colombian workers have no rights, then there's no level playing field for American workers, and that costs jobs. This FTA is set up to help the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. It's the last thing Colombia's workers, farmers, and human rights defenders need. And finally, Madam Speaker, let me ask my colleagues in this chamber, do human rights matter anymore? If so, we should not be debating this FTA today. We should be waiting until we see real, honest-to-goodness results on the ground in terms of improvements of human rights. When it comes to human rights, Madam Speaker, the United States of America should not be a cheap date. We should stand firm, and we should be unabashed in our support for human rights. And, Madam Speaker, that is why I urge all my colleagues to vote no on this FTA agreement.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. At this time, I yield 1 minute to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Smith.
The gentleman from Nebraska is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand in strong support of this trade agreement that will open up U.S. production to over 40 million consumers close off our shores. While the national economic and strategic impact of the Colombia Agreement is very important, the increased marketing opportunity, obviously, for Nebraska is tremendous as well. Specifically for agriculture, the agreement with Colombia will lead to gains for Nebraska's major commodities such as soybeans and wheat. Currently, all U.S. ag exports to Colombia face tariffs. Upon implementation of the agreement, 3/4 of Colombia's tariff lines will become duty-free for U.S. exports. Specifically, Colombia places an 80% tariff on U.S. beef imports today, making it one of the highest tariffs on U.S. beef in the world, and this agreement changes that. Colombia has also lifted unscientific restrictions. Colombia will recognize the equivalence of the U.S. food safety system for meat, poultry, and processed foods, a significant victory for U.S. livestock producers. I want to make sure Nebraska products and producers make the most of the opportunities provided by international sales to increase exports. I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
I now yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from California, Ms. Lee.
The gentlewoman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I rise in opposition to the Colombia Free Trade Agreement. I support trade that is fair, trade that protects labor rights, trade that protects the environment, trade that creates American jobs. Unfortunately, these trade agreements before us this week fail at all three. Labor leaders continue to be murdered in Colombia simply for standing up for basic rights, and the Colombian government has failed to act. And how in the world can those who support these deals turn a blind eye to the thousands of Colombians killed by right-wing death squads? Are we really rewarding these death squads with this agreement? Also, free trade agreements are supposed to open up foreign markets and create more good-paying American jobs. Instead, these agreements will only increase our trade deficits and cost over 190,000 American jobs. We cannot create American jobs by doing more of the same. We have to put American workers first and stop shipping jobs overseas. In addition to being fair, these trade agreements must be free and fair, and until they are, I cannot support them.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
At this time, I yield 1 minute to the distinguished chair of the Foreign Relations Committee, the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Ross-Lightman.
The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized for 1 minute.
Well, I thank the Speaker, and I thank my good friend, the chairman of the committee, and I'm just astounded, but I'm very pleased to hear my good friends from the other side speak so eloquently about support for human rights and support for labor leaders and workers' rights. Yet some of these folks are the very same ones who want to lift all sanctions against communist totalitarian Cuba, where labor unions are outlawed, where workers have no rights, and where human rights are not respected at all. I don't think the Castro brothers can even spell human rights in either language. But on to the point of human rights and free trade and dignity for workers in Colombia. I am so pleased that finally we're going to pass this agreement. In South Florida, Mr. Chairman, Colombia is already South Florida's second largest trading partner, and our two largest economic engines are the Port of Miami and the Miami International Airport, both of which will benefit tremendously from the increase in trade with a free, democratic Colombia. So I welcome this, and I hope that this newfound love for human rights and trade and labor unions will extend to my native homeland of Cuba one day. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin.
It's now my pleasure to yield 1 minute to the very distinguished gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch.
The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank
for
you,
1
Madam
minute.
Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from Michigan for yielding. The only thing I have agreed with so far in tonight's debate from the other side is that America's credibility is on the line. I really do believe that. We've had 2,697 trade unionists killed over the past 2 decades in Colombia. 94% of these murders go unprosecuted. You know, I was an iron worker at the General Motors plant when we signed NAFTA. And Mexico, of course, was 4% of the U.S. economy. And not long after that, they closed the plant that I was working at, moved it over the border in Mexico. Colombia is 3% of the U.S. economy, not even 3%. This is all about shifting American jobs down to Colombia. That's what this is all about. Give me a break. The reason we have 9% unemployment in this country is because we keep shipping jobs overseas. When you find yourself in a ditch, it's time to stop digging. Okay? This is a bad deal. We should be ashamed of ourselves.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
At this time, Madam Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Manzullo.
The gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I rise in support of all three market opening agreements. Over the past 3 years, the United States posted a surplus of over $70 billion in manufactured goods with our free trade agreement partners. These free trade agreements that we are discussing have the potential to generate more exports to create or sustain 250,000 jobs. Last year, the Brookings Institute released a study of Rockford, Illinois, the metropolitan area, with a population of 350,000, and stated that the area exported a whopping $3.3 billion in 2008, making Rockford the most export-intensive city in all of Illinois. Over 16,000 jobs in the Rockford area are directly related to these exports. With the passage of these three free trade agreements, we can have even more exports coming from northern Illinois to the rest of the world. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
Let me ask, this is a somewhat unusual structure here. Each of us, we're going to take 15 minutes of our total allotment. I want to talk to Mr. Camp. I think we have used all but 2 of our minutes, and I want to use those 2 minutes to close the 15 minutes. So I'm not quite sure where you are on your 15 minutes.
I have 2 more speakers at a minute each. So my plan is to have those be the conclusion of our time.
So why don't you call on one, and then I'll take mine, and then you'll add, you'll have one more person.
All right. Madam Speaker, at this time I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Florida, Mr. Rivera.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, has 1 minute remaining. 31 minutes remaining. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Colombia Free Trade Agreement represents a critical juncture in our trade relations. It does so because it's about economic security, but it's also about national security. It's about economic security because the Colombia Free Trade Agreement means jobs, thousands of jobs for America. In my community and for our national economy in particular, international commerce is important to creating those jobs. But it's also about national security, because the Colombia Free Trade Agreement will send a message to our allies, and just as importantly, it will send a message to our enemies. All of Latin America, and indeed the world, will be watching to see if we are going to stand up with our allies, those that are fighting for democracy and fighting against narco-terror. Vote yes on this trade agreement, and stand up for our best ally in Latin America, Colombia. Vote yes on this agreement, and stand up for jobs in America. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Florida yields back. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, reserves. And the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
I yield myself 2 minutes.
Gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
We have 3 FTAs before us. Each one of those should be taken on their own. And let me express my strong views about the Colombia FTA based on my 3 trips there. Trade is more than about tariffs or flow of goods. as important as they are. It's about people. And where workers have no rights, increased trade with another country can work against us and can work against the other country. Colombia, in that regard, has presented a special case. Violation of basic rights has gone on for decades, and not only those violations of laws, but violation of persons, violence, and death. The Santos administration came to power and said it wanted to do it differently. Our two governments sat down and worked on an agreement on worker rights. It was a step forward, but there is a serious set of problems. First of all, the implementation of that in important instances has been spotty, especially as to the vehement misuse of cooperatives in Colombia and so-called collective pacts. And secondly, there was an absolute refusal on the part of the Republican majority to have any reference in the implementation plan to this action plan, to implementation bill. That is a serious, serious flaw. For that reason, I am very much opposed to this agreement.